And I know that there have been some new county macro moth records in 24, so I assume that's one of the things we're going to be hearing about. So, and I just wanted you to notice that he is wearing his big shirt like I am, and he's indeed showing the secret thing that you could order them with or without a big member on the sleeves. And some of us were brave enough to have it, some people declined. Over to you.
Right, it's about 3 years since I've done a moth update, which I used to do regularly for the Beamwork annual conferences. So this is a sort of amalgamation of the last few years, plus some other bits and pieces thrown in. Because I tend to run out of time, I put some things that would normally go at the end right at the beginning. So you
probably need to point it in this direction. Try out. Okay.
So acknowledgements, these are people who kindly supplied photographs, or I've used their photographs. The one mentioned for Peter Hall, although he's no longer in Bucks, he's hundreds of miles away in Scotland, he still does a lot of identification and dissection of the micromoths and things, other things that need to have their genitalia looked at. And without him doing that, we'd be having a lot fewer records of some of the common things and difficult to identify things. Just jumping ahead without me pressing things. Various things that have developed, certainly more than 3 years ago, but they've changed a bit. The use of pheromones, well, they've been used for many years, hundreds of years, by entomologists. Emperor moth is a classic example. People collect caterpillars, rear them up, they'd emerge the next year, and then when the female's ready to mate, hang her up in a little tree, in a cage in a tree or wherever, and the males will come along. They're attracted by the pheromones the females putting out. So more recently, pest control companies have had synthetic pheromones developed to try and control pest species and kill them in warehouses, flour mills, orchards, that sort of thing. And from that, I suppose mainly because a couple of the clearing moths are pests in orchards or fruit growing places, other pheromones were developed for other clearing moths. And the clearings traditionally were very poorly recorded because you just don't normally see them. And it's completely changed our ideas of how abundant they are within Bucks. And some things where we had only 1 or 2 records, suddenly with the pheromones, we've got dozens of records. Originally the suggestion was you hang your pheromone out and hang around and watch it to see things coming in, which you might get something, you might not, you never quite know. But then people started using these traps, which you normally use for pest control. So your pheromone where's the pointer going? The pheromone sits in there, and the moths come in and end up in the bottom. So you can leave it out all day and go back and check what's there, rather than having to stand and look and wait. And the other thing that's happened, a lot of these pheromones, they're designed for individual species, but other things get attracted as well. And with the clearings, some of them for specific species also attract others, which isn't that surprising because they're related. But nowadays people are looking at other moths and other insects that might come into the traps. And there's a lot of interest in the bycatch. And it's getting us good records for other moths, totally unrelated to the clearings and their distribution. How they work, well, you've got these molecules of pheromone that drift off and attract males. But when you think about how much is coming off from the pheromone lures, how far is it going? And if the wind's blowing, how on earth does other males latch onto it and come to the trap? And these pheromones that you get, they last for up to 5 to 10 years even, if you store them properly. So it's amazing to see, because they're only in a tiny little thing as big as your fingernail almost, and they're just dispersed out of there. Record submission, well, traditionally it used to be pen and paper, and people would write their lists out and send them in. Then we had word processors, and that would transfer to a Word document, and spreadsheets as well. And that's all been very useful in particularly the spreadsheets, because I can import data from that directly into the Bucks database. And then you have bespoke software for recording. MapMate was used quite a lot. That's no longer supported, but it's still working. And iRecord is the big one now. I guess most of you heard of iRecord, and some of you use it. What's really good about it is within your record you can put a photograph, just added on. Whereas in the old pen and paper days, generally weren't photographs, and they're so important for verifying records. So as Alan was mentioning about knowing someone and their people's experience, having a lot like that, particularly if you don't have photographs. And the photograph is not necessarily the ideal of verifying records. There are a lot of things it is, but other specimens, you need a specimen, genitalia might need examining, or you might have to look at the hind wings and things like that. So to have specimens is really good, particularly if it's a new species for bucks or even the country. And it also means we can look back in museum collections at other things. So where maybe we've had a species split into two, you can look back at old specimens to see whether we had it years ago. Errors, well, they're always creeping in, and there are ways now where there's help to decide whether a record might be right. That's what record cleaners do. So the data in the spreadsheet is run through a record cleaner, and it will tell you whether it's within the right sort of flight period, or it won't do that, it tells you if it's not in the right flight period, or it's in an area where it's not been recorded for, and it can flag up that it needs careful identification with a similar looking species. Now, of course, there are websites where you can put a photograph up and it instantly gives you no identification. Sometimes they're very good, other times they're not. And I know some of them give you a guide as to how sure it is, which is very helpful. But even if it doesn't get the right species, it hopefully will get you in the right sort of area to be looking for. Talking about errors, people send in a record of a brimstone. In iRecord, you can start typing in the name and it will predict what you might be saying. So things like brimstone, you've got two options.
Yes.
And if you take it one step further, now this is one that actually happened to me. There was a record of bugle marbled in the database, and it was from someone whose name I didn't know. There wasn't a photograph, and luckily in iRecord you can look up the person's experience as to how many records they've sent in of that group and how many times their records have been rejected. And this person had never sent in a moth record. She'd sent in lots of plant records, but never a moth record. So this thing, having bugle, the name, she'd obviously put in bugle, and it had come up with a taxonomic name, which she obviously didn't know the taxonomic names. So it got through as a moth. It could have been that. Generally, communication, as I said, used to be pen and paper. So if you want to tell people about things, or meetings where you saw people in person and you could tell them about what you found, or in print newsletters, which we still have. Nowadays, a lot of the communication is electronic, with emails and that sort of thing. And recording software also helps, particularly on iRecord, because once you put the record into iRecord, almost anybody can see it. So without you having to write to people can look. We have an Upper Thames moth blog, or we did have, which people sent records into and their observations. They could put photographs up and people could help with identifications, which was very useful. The blog is no longer supported, so we've moved to a Facebook page, which has only been going for a couple of weeks, or a bit more than that, a couple of months. But that will do a similar thing. And we also have an Upper Thames atlas, which I'm just posting. So this is the old blog that people could send their reports and things into. And Upper Thames is Bucks, Berks and Oxon. And this is the new start of the Facebook group. So if you're interested, just go into Facebook and search for Upper Thames moths. And then the Moth Atlas, which has been going now for about four years. This is just the opening homepage. And this is part of a species page, so there's various information about records, and this verification grade here, so you can see whether it's easy or difficult to identify. And just on the side there you see a map, so there's distribution map for Bucks, Berks and Oxon, 2 date ranges, so that's available for anyone to go on. You can just go on. It's upperthamesmoths.co.uk. So if you've got something you think is unusual, you can instantly go to this and see. Not quite totally up to date. We're not trying to update it every couple of years, but if there's a new species or something like that, we can put that in manually.
5 minutes.
Right. New Bucks moth species. They're the numbers. So over 3 years, we've got 35 new species. Most of them micros, but a reasonable number of macros. And there are a number of reasons for this. With climate change and the climate changing, we're getting more migrants. Things that used to be migrants, which became established on the south coast, they're now moving further inland. And as well as that, there are various adventives that gets imported in various ways. So here's a few of them. The Jersey Mocha. So the first one for the UK was in 2003. It's a migrant, or was initially, it's now established in some places, feeding on oak, the larvae. Comanche's rustic, This was an interesting one. It was a migrant, first in Britain in 2002, but now established in some places. Can be tricky to identify, and the very first one we had, someone sent a record in, thought it was one. I wasn't sure, so I actually sent it to Mr. Clancy, and he said it wasn't. And then a couple of days later, I sent another one by the same person saying, I think it's this one this time, and it was. And that's now been seen in several places in Bucks. West Harrow, it's a rare resident, possible migrant, and it's a bit out of place in Bucks. The records are normally much more southern, and it feeds on West Harrow, the larvae. Bleak striped, and again it's a scarce resident, mostly in the south, feeds on ladies' bedstraw, but like other things, they're spreading around. Spiny hooked is only really discovered last year that we had it in this country. It's very difficult to tell from the oak hook tip, and I suppose a good photograph might help with the identification, but we haven't enough experience of it yet to know the variations within it and within the oak hook tip, and whether there's overlapping in the visual identification. And it's been found now over quite a bit of the south. This is a scarce migrant, first in the UK in 2014. Might be established in places, and the larvae feed on silver fir and Norway spruce. Saltern, we've got several species of ear moth, and they're very difficult to tell apart. Normally in Bucks we just have what's the common ear moth, and we normally want genitalia determined to check, and this was one which to the recorder looked slightly different to normal. He got it sent off, had the genitalia done by Peter, and it turned out to be a Saltern ear. So now there's even more reason to have your ear moth's genitalia checked. If you think it looks a bit different, then get it checked. The first one of these Zany rough bongworms was in 2008, or first in Europe was 2018. It's an East Asian species, including Japan, where it's a pest on azaleas and rhododendrons. It eats the buds and the flowers. And it was, there have been previous British ones, but only 1 or 2. And that would have been a definite adventive, probably coming on horticultural trade plants. Blue fanfoot, another migrant, maybe becoming established. First UK ones was 1995. And last year was obviously a good year for it because we not only had our first one, but we had 4 or 5. Angma's yellow underwing, well, this was only recognised as a separate species in 2001. It's very difficult to separate from a very common lesser broad-bordered yellow underwing. And you can see on the left there, the things you have to look for are to do with the forewing underside and the hindwing. So in a normal view, you can't tell. So you have to separate the wings out to be able to look. But it's the black band on the top of the hindwing. If it's a black band right across, then it's this species. If it's not, it's the other one. So it does really mean now that we know we've got it, we need to take a lot more careful look at all the very common lesser broad orders. And it involves having to pick it up and handle it to see the features. We're now into the micro moths. This one It's a Mediterranean species, likely advented, brought in on some sort of goods. This one was found the other year at Arncott, when survey work was done there. The food plant is Viper's bugloss, and it's very scarce in the south where Viper's bugloss occurs. The migrant, normally scarce, normally on the coast, has now had several records of it in bucks. It feeds on garlic and hedge mustard and garlic mustard. This little tiny thing, it's first in the UK in 2001, mostly in the south coast, but it's obviously spreading, but it's local. The larvae feed on literally the wall. This is just an example of something where we had two species and we thought we were identifying them correctly, but then it was decided we weren't. We needed to do genitalia. So all the old records now have to be grouped together because we don't really know which they were. But hopefully there's some in collections that we might be able to get a better idea about. Ethme quadrillella, nationally widespread, local, usually found in wet places, and it feeds on the larvae feed on common plankton. This one again is a widespread local species feeding on small scabious.
Yes.